So let's start with Heads in the Cloud with Jonathan Carrillo. Jonathan is a lead infrastructure consultant at Thoughtworks with a focus on high-performance team, cognitive load, and how to improve platforms by relying on the feedback of developers. Jonathan, it's your stage. Thank you.
Thank you. Do you hear me? Yes, I am. Thank you, Marianne. So everyone can see my slides, right? Yes, cool. Then let's start with the Heads in the Cloud. Okay, let me introduce myself. So hi, everyone. I am Jonathan Carrillo. I've been working with cloud technologies for the last 8 years. Now I am working from Thoughtworks Spain for more than 1 year, and my role is the infrastructure lead. Okay, for today's presentations, I will share my experience, learnings, and pain while working with cloud technology as a member of multiple cloud teams. I will share some recommendations based on experience working in multiple types of cloud ecosystems, from mid-size to large organizations. Let me start saying the cloud is complex, right? Even simple needs on modern times can get extremely complicated with lots of moving parts connected. For example, even deploying a simple service with a cron job schedule require many AWS services and some knowledge to glue them together. Well, when everything is working fine, there's no problems. Right? But what happens when something starts to fail? Trying to find the root cause on this level of complexity could lead to frustration. But not only frustration, also lack of focus and the ability to process new information. Type of themes that I have been suffering in the past. I always assume it was like lack of training, maybe lack of context, or even lack of coffee while I was working. But in recent years, I discovered the concept of cognitive overload. That is defined as a situation when we get the inability to focus, paralysis of information, and not able to process, and then act on what we heard or see. Just the symptoms that I faced many times in my career before. So the next question that I have is like, how I could avoid being on this state? Before jumping to that, let me briefly introduce the cognitive load theory defined by John Swaller, a psychologist, many years ago. The cognitive load is defined like the amount of information you have to keep on memory to be efficient or productive. The types of cognitive load are divided by intrinsic, extraneous, and German. These types I will explain it with details and examples in another slide. The theory also says that the intrinsic load can be reduced with training or bootcamp. The extraneous should be reduced to give a space to the germane load that actually is not bad because the germane promote the processing and constructions of new ideas. Before giving you recommendations about how to reduce the cognitive load while you're working with the cloud, let me share past experience that I have while working with platforms and ignoring completely the cognitive load of the users and members. Let's simulate the following cloud ecosystem. In a small to mid-sized company that decides to adopt the DevOps operating model, quite famous on these days, right? The infrastructure team is the gateway for any kind of business delivery. But we can see, like, for example, that any of the product teams need to pass by the infrastructure team. So this could be like a bottleneck, right? But let's ignore that for a second. And also let's focus on the objective of the infra team. Maintain the key to the cloud. So every decision must be approved by the team before accepting the cloud. That looks nice, right? I mean, you are the gatekeeper for something so dangerous as the cloud, right? Maybe the user don't have the knowledge to use it, right? Restricted security, embedded on the security, on the infrastructure. Sorry. The security is a really delicate concern that all organizations have, right? So we should embed it since the beginning. And if you have infrastructure has a code, then you has many analysis tools that you could possibly can. One-click deploy, extracting every CI or CD operations and configuration needed. I mean, this is just the dream, right? You just do a couple of clicks and then you have all your applications running in the cloud in a secure manner, right? Let's talk also that the production is totally locked. The production environment is totally locked for any non-infra member. And also this is in a centralized infrastructure, achieving performance and optimizations to try to keep in level the cost of the cloud. I mean, if we see it in papers, all these objectives looks really nice for the organization side. We actually we are increasing the delivery to market of the business and also making easy the cloud journey, right? It's true that they look nice on paper, but after you start working on the implementation, they start to fail. In the past, I end on platforms that looks a little bit like this. The platform ends being more complex than the cloud provider himself. This is me many times in the past explaining how to use our platform, right? In an onboarding session. But what about the maintainer of this platform? Let me present you Joe. Let's scale deployment, not stress at all. Joe with 24 years old. When you create a platform that is the single point of contact with the cloud, without user autonomy, then support tickets are going to rain on the platform team when something fails, because you are the only way for them to fix the problems that they have in production. And obviously this adds a lot of stress and cognitive load on your platform team. But then there is an easy way of doing things. Well, what if we start taking in consideration the cognitive load from the users and the maintainers when building a complex platform? A really good starting point will be team topologies. A great book that focuses on people and the way they organize and communicate while developing complex applications. They describe our organization model with 4 types of teams: the complicated subsystem teams, the enabling teams, the string aligned teams, and us, the platform team. I'm gonna focus on the last 2 types of teams described on the book. For example, the string aligned teams are made to promote their germane load in order to deliver business value, improving the creativity of the team, right? While the platform team are enablers that remove extraneous load with automation for any kind of tedious chore. It is important here that they are removing some kind of extraneous load or boilerplate that maybe you need in the cloud, but not limiting the access to the cloud. Also, having more than 1 type of enabler team is a point that I really like, because in the past, the platform team was the only enabler team, the only team who was working for the developers. So the scope of the platform was quite big. But on this model, actually, you are not the only enabler team. Actually, you have the complicated subsystem teams for all legacy softwares or maybe mainstreams. And then you have the enabling team that they should be for a short time working in one specific specialized technology, but that could also be something related to the cloud, right? So dividing the ownership of the cloud in multiple enabler team allow you to relieve the load that you may have in your platform members. Also, the string aligns are autonomous with the cross-functional skill to operate their applications on production. When I say about operations, I'm talking building the artifacts, deploying the artifacts, and dealing with all the observability and support of the applications in production. They are the owner of the application. They should investigate and do troubleshooting of the application on the platform that we build. Let's go back to the type of cognitive flow that I mentioned before. And let's match each thing of each type of cognitive load to real examples. Let's start with the string aligned teams. We can say that the intrinsic load for them will be how to structure a Java class, while the extraneous will be how to deploy my service on the cloud. The germane, like I said before, is something actually not negative, but positive, will be how my service should interact with other services. Or in the case that you have microservice, how my microservice should interact with other microservices or the front end. And this is important. This is where the real business value is created. Well, let's flick the coin to the platform team. What will be the intrinsic load? That will be how to deploy a container in GCP. The extraneous will be how my Kafka cluster has been created. This is something that is important. When you are actually using all the features of the cloud, this is something that you don't need to focus anymore and could actually be automated. And then you have a space to do more creative things or important things when you are actually creating a platform, like defining the type of IAM roles for my users. So we can build a platform again with different teams, organization, and it's gonna be better. Yeah, maybe you could try. But we also still have the risk of building a complex platform with many features that our users might not need. Why not splitting the beefy platform in small platform products? Why not taking the approach of the cloud providers, building a small and also somehow decouple with a big asterisk here, services for the platform? Not only that, the platform products should also focus, they also could include self-service. The string aligned teams need autonomy to provision their environments and resources in the cloud. They don't need to have a bottleneck on the platform teams. The platform also should be made for the user needs. A roadmap only driven by user needs in conjunction with company compliance regulations is also something good to have. Important, it's essential when you are actually building any kind of product. Feedback from the user. The feature development includes user feedback as part of the product lifecycle. And last but not least, the simplicity is always have to be the goal. Usability, at least for me, is equally important as performance. And this is something that I struggle a lot in the past. Well, we on platform, we tend to concern more about performance, not on the way we build our tool, the journeys that our user have to actually use our tools. Just like the string aligned teams, your platform should also be your platform team should also be displayed when reach X amount of cognitive load. I mean, cloud engineers are humans as well, so they get stressed and also they get old. But dividing into several platform teams can be even harder than string aligned teams. The following are some recommendations that helped me before while splitting teams. Cross-functional skills are essential while splitting teams, but avoid splitting teams by functional tech expertise. Like, oh, I have all the people who is really good on databases. Let me create one platform team only focus on databases. No, try to avoid that kind of teams. They are gonna make isolation between them. Try to build a platform team who is totally cross-functional on operations and also development and also business vision. A platform team not necessarily need to enable string-aligned teams. And this is something that I discovered later and could actually like facilitate a lot when you are having more than one platform team. You could have one platform team who is actually enabled of another platform team. The product or codes are separate by teams, and they don't share any responsibility between. This is really important. I saw before teams trying to split their members in different teams, but keeping the same code base, but then having the same dependency each other and trying to work this with the pull request approach. But the problem is that pull requests not always give you the full context to review it. So try to avoid to have a centralized code base. The coupling is harder, it's true. It's harder than the string aligned teams. That's why the collaboration is important. I think you have more collaboration in a platform team than any other of the previous described types. Sometimes you are gonna have you need to coordinate with other platform team in order to decrease the cost of the cloud or in order to decrease the carbon footprint of the whole cloud. Usability between products on different teams must be similar to keep intrinsic load on string aligned teams. If you try to split and multiply UI across different teams, they should have similar standards. So it's not gonna get messy for the user when they jump to one UI to do CI, and then when they wanna do the CD, at least the next CD UI should be somehow similar. And also define your platform capabilities and separate teams on similar domains. The truth is like every platform ecosystem in our organization has different needs. So, but I could give you some examples. For example, normally a mid-sized to large organization needs somehow observability, but they also need cost and optimization. You can map together these two domains and put them in a platform team. And then you can have another platform team who could focus on security and governance. Another example would be a team who only is taking care of continuous deployments and continuous integrations. Designing how to create a platform architecture will affect the intrinsic load of the users and the maintainers. My best advice on that is don't try to reinvent the wheel. Utilize as much as you can from the cloud providers and open source communities. Shift stateful workloads to PaaS or SaaS as much as you can. For example, if you have a Postgres database, don't try to put it in top of your platform. If you have something like RDS, in case you are using Amazon, or SQL Expander, in case that you are using Google Cloud. Kubernetes is hard at the beginning, but simplify many platform charts on the long term. I've been working with Kubernetes for a really long time. And then at some point I decided to use other alternatives for platforms. And reality is like, it's true at the beginning, if you use something like ECS, it's gonna be more easy for the users to jump into that. But then when you wanna promote the tech standard, then it gets a little bit more complicated to promote like a standard across the whole organization. In Kubernetes, actually, you don't need to invent most of this stuff. It's already built. with custom controllers. Even the cloud provider have a lot of software who is actually running in Kubernetes. Wait for mature software before implementing in your platform. Don't avoid to be on the bleeding edge, what they call it, in the latest version of one specific component of your platform. Because if they make a mistake, then you are gonna get that pain multiplied by 10 because you are gonna see it with your users. Kit infrastructure has code and continuous deployment for your product as well. We always in platform team promote the use of testing, the use of continuous integrations, continuous deployment, pipelines everywhere. What we forgot to implement is on our products. One is the number of cloud providers that your platform normally needs. Unless you are forced by regulations, try to stay with a unique provider. Avoiding what is called cloud vendor lock-in, in the majority of the case, is going to increase the complexity of your platform. Many of the integrated features between services are lost if you try to be cloud agnostic. In case that you need like a hybrid architecture with a private and a cloud, and a private and a public clouds, there's some offerings from providers like Azure Stack or GCP Anthos who actually reduce the cognitive load of connecting both clouds. Take an advantage of that. Handling support. As an enabler team, supporting your day-to-day is going to be, supporting your product is going to be day-to-day responsibility. But see the support has opportunity to polish your products. Expose SLOs metrics to the users and define realistic thresholds. In case that you have on call, reduce the intrinsic load with simulations and trainings. Like you could, for example, you can implement game days of your platform to try to simulate errors before happening. Or in case, then try to put a lot of observability on that exercise and learn from that. Later, you can also put a lot of documentation, like runbooks, for example, for errors that maybe you cannot fix, but you know that will happen when you are in on call. Finally, if you can measure it, you cannot improve it. Start tracking the cognitive load of users and maintainers. Team topologies have service templates and check-ins that are good to get numbers, and you could implement like a user service for the user of the platform, or you could also do check-ins on the team retros for the platform teams. Also, these metrics can be also team goals or KPIs in case that you're using KPIs. And also, after you get numbers of the cognitive load, see how they change when you are releasing a new feature or adopting a new technology, like migrating from one cloud to another. Try to think in the cognitive load that is gonna affect your platform and your users. And that's it. Thank you. The idea of the presentation was to share some recommendations that I've been having based on my career.
Yeah, thank you, Jonathan. It was a really interesting talk. So please, if you have any questions, please submit them in the Q&A chat. You can see this little icon in the Zoom window. Anyhow, there is already something. How do you divide effort from product support and feature development? I mean, there's always a need of balancing both. So how do you do that?
Yeah, it's actually when the difference between string and line teams is like your users are going to be right there, right? Because you are supporting a platform. If you make one mistake, the user are going to complain right to you in Slack, right? And this is actually is going to increase the cognitive load. So in the past, I see like a real benefit, like including a VA on my teams. And with the VA, we try to manage like, for example, for give you an example that really worked well for me is like 20% of my effort is going to be on support, and the rest is going to be on adding new features to the platform. But also try to focus the support, take the advantage of that. For example, if you see that one of the products that you have is like receiving a lot of support, then that means that you should focus on that instead of having new features in another product.
Yeah, thank you. And there's another one. Do you know any good example of the organizational restructuring according to the team topology methodology?
Any platform organization?
Yeah, restructuring the organization when it comes to for instance, if you measure cognitive loads is increasing, so what are the good examples of the organizational restructuring according to the team topologies methodology? They explain.
Okay. Well, on the platform team, they say that they are like any other kind of team, that they are humans, right? So it's really hard to give you like an architecture how you could divide your platform teams, because every company have different needs. So the only recommendation that I could tell you is like try to identify what are the needs that you need. Maybe it's like CI, maybe it's CD, maybe it's cost, maybe it's observability, maybe it's service hub in case that you are having many products, and then try to map or split these domains, that the ones that are the couple or could be together somehow one domain to another, and then try to split that to teams. And then keep measuring the cognitive flow. When you see that your team is having too many products and the cognitive flow is increasing too much, start making action, start making new teams.
So how do you measure cognitive load? Is it in terms of velocity, providing products, or how do you do that?
Actually, you can, the way I did it before, like every time we did like a team retro of the stream, for example, we always we send a survey for my members, right? You can make questions like, how comfortable do you feel responding to a specific issue in the platform? There's a survey template from Team Topology that you can use that can give you like a really nice insights about the cognitive flow of the team.
Thank you. And there is another question. How to deal with platform onboarding when not starting with a greenfield and then having the need to commit teams for migrating from a former tool to the new one? Any suggestion on approaches to take?
Yeah, so I had that before many times. The migration is really hard, but I will say that try to build the new platform with only beta testers. Try to have like a full product life cycle. Try to get you in the organization. You always gonna have like people who want to try new teams. So try to invite these product teams to your new platform. Try to get feedback from them. Try to build it. And when you think it's already mature enough, you can start releasing to the rest of the company. You don't need to do it all at once.
Okay, thank you. You mentioned adopting Kubernetes. Is adopting Kubernetes a way to avoid cloud vendoring?
Yeah, actually, people, I think even Kubernetes in the past, the Kubernetes community in the past say that that is a way to avoid cloud vendoring. But I don't know right now if you actually use only Kubernetes in AWS. and then you decide to move to another cloud, it's not like agnostic at all. You need to change. You need to do a lot of changes. Actually, you need to put a lot of effort. That's why for me it's like kind of live. It's like when you say like, if I use Terraform, then I could move between clouds easily. Well, no, you have to redefine your entire like infrastructure as a code if you decide to move from Google Cloud to AWS, for example.
Okay, thank you. That is an interesting one. What do you think of platform building abstraction layer on top of two cloud providers required by regulations? Is it a good approach or a cloud out? Or is it a tool will be a better approach? When to choose one or the other?
Yeah. So if you have a regulation, this is something you have to deal with. You don't have an option here. So the only option that you have is like if you want to use like a SaaS solution, like a rancher, or if you want to build it by yourself. I will say this rancher is not very pricey to you. For example, rancher is one of many options. Then you should evaluate rancher, for example. In the last result, I will do it myself.
Okay. So there are no further questions right now, unless there's last one. Okay. Then I would say thanks again. Jonathan, was a really interesting talk. And I hope and at least me, I learn a lot based out of your experience.